hand underneath you.
Oh, what the
I can't breathe. I can't breathe. That's not an actor reading lines. That's real audio from a body camera, October 17th, 2024, inside the Cherokee Indian Hospital in North Carolina. A son, Travis Zepeda, face down on the cold floor, an officer's hand pressed against his neck, gasping for air because he dared to say he'd go above and beyond for his own father. You know, just like I know, that something is very wrong with the way they treat ordinary people now. We've all seen the videos. We've all had that sick feeling in our stomachs when we realize the people wearing the badges aren't protecting families, they're destroying them. And what you're about to hear exposes a level of corruption and twisted logic that they don't want you to know about, a secret they hoped would stay buried in a tribal police report. But the files are out. The body cam footage exists. And once you see how a $2,000 comment brought the entire house of cards crashing down, you'll never look at a welfare check the same way again. It started with a father in crisis. Michael Zepeda worked at Harrah's Cherokee Casino. He was a man struggling, battling demons that had been eating at him for years. He'd told a casino investigator things that frightened them, dark thoughts about self-harm, about not being able to go on, about how only his mother kept him tethered to this world. Any decent human being would see a cry for help. The system saw a threat to be neutralized. Officer Crystal Edwards of the Cherokee Indian Police Department responded, spoke with Michael, and instead of de-escalating, she immediately began building a case for involuntary commitment. She wrote in her report that he said no one would be able to stop him if he decided to act, that he possessed weapons, that his mother was the only thing holding him together. Now you listen to those words carefully, because they matter. That's not a man making an immediate threat. That's a man articulating pain. But in the hands of a system that profits from control, pain is just a checkbox on a petition. The magistrate, T. Welch, rubber-stamped the custody order, and Michael was taken to the hospital, stripped of his freedom, labelled a danger to himself. And we all knew this would happen, didn't we? We've seen it 1,000 times. Mental health laws twisted into weapons, not shields. Enter the hero nobody saw coming. Travis Zepeda, the son, arrives at the emergency room demanding to see his dad. He's not a lawyer. He's not an activist. He's just a young man who loves his father, and he knows something the officers refuse to acknowledge, that his dad isn't a threat, that the whole thing was built on a misunderstanding. The body camera rolls. Travis is on the phone with his father when the officers approach, Probation Officer Joshua Taylor and Sergeant Cody Owl. Right away, the tension is there, thick and suffocating. Travis is respectful, but firm. He doesn't bow, he doesn't cower. He says, "My dad doesn't ever lie
at the time.
to me."
Now, if a court were to credit those statements as accurately reflecting what Michael said to Officer Edwards before
that one sentence, that declaration of trust between a son and his father, becomes the catalyst for everything that follows. Because once you assert that you know the truth and they don't, you become a target. And that's exactly what happened. The officers tell Travis that his dad made threats. Travis pushes back. "Show the video,"
and dangerousness may appear before a magistrate and execute an affidavit and petition for a custody order. If the magistrate
They can't. They stumble the
facility
camera.
for examination by a commitment examiner. Well, according to Officer Edwards' incident report, while still at the casino, Michael told her that self-harm had been an ongoing issue, that when he decided to act on it, no
They
one
claim
would...
they can't magically make the footage appear. And then Travis, trying to explain how much he believes in his father, says the words that would change his life
The
forever.
reasonable grounds threshold for a custody order under Cherokee law was met, as Michael's statements constituted an affirmative articulation of suicidal ideation and suggested dangerousness to self in the immediate future. Here,
I
Officer
just
Edwards...
handed $2,000. I'll go up and beyond for my dad. Stop right there. Any reasonable person, any grandparent, any church-going mother or father hears that and knows exactly what he meant. I just gave money, and I'll do whatever it takes for my family. It's an expression of devotion, the kind of sacrificial love we're supposed to admire. But Officer Taylor didn't hear love. He heard a threat. In his police report, he wrote that he interpreted Travis's statement about the $2,000 as referring to
The
bond
officers
money.
take me to jail because this dude's crazy. This dude's nuts. He attacked me. I wasn't resisting. Look on the video
Cash
camera.
he'd used to bail himself out after assaulting a law enforcement officer. Read that again. A son says he'd go above and beyond for his dad, and the cop's brain turns it into a premeditated assault fund. That is not law enforcement. That is a demonic inversion of reality, twisting good into evil, love into violence. And they don't want you to ask why. Why would a trained officer leap to that conclusion? What's really hiding behind that panic? The breadcrumb I'm about to drop will make your stomach turn. Because the moment Travis utters those words, the officers don't de-escalate. They attack. Put your hands behind your back, Taylor orders, shoves him against the wall. Travis, confused, says,
Volume of his voice are considered. Now, as for the resisting lawful arrest charge, Section 14-70.19 of the Cherokee Code makes it unlawful to create a substantial risk of bodily harm or to employ means of
I didn't
resistance.
threaten you. I just said I'd go up and beyond for my dad. But it's too late. The machine is in motion. Taylor and Owl take him to the ground. On the body cam, you hear Travis crying out, "I can't breathe. I can't breathe," while an officer's hand presses against the side of his head and neck. They twist his wrist. They call him crazy. They arrest him for disorderly conduct and resisting arrest, all based on that tortured interpretation of a son's love. And here's the thing that will make you furious. The charges were eventually dismissed. A court looked at the same evidence and saw no probable cause, no threat, no crime. The resisting charge presupposed a lawful arrest, and since the arrest itself was rotten, the whole thing collapsed. Justice, right? Not exactly, because Michael Zepeda is still trying to find an attorney to file a civil rights lawsuit, and as of the writing of the original legal commentary, no lawyer will touch the case. Why? You tell me. In a world where police brutality settlements make headlines every week, why would this slam-dunk case, with body cam footage, with a clearly documented violation of First Amendment rights, be untouchable? The silence is deafening, and it reeks of a blackballing that protects the badge at all costs. But Travis wasn't the only one who got steamrolled that night. While he was being choked for loving his father, his dad was being restrained in another room. The incident report describes Michael attempting to leave the exam room, struggling, kicking, trying to bite an officer's arm. Behaviour that happened after the commitment order was already signed. Those actions didn't justify the original detention, but the officers used them to paint the whole family as violent. It's a classic tactic. Provoke the vulnerable, then point at their reaction as proof you were right all along. And that's what they want you to miss. They want you to think, well, the dad fought back, so maybe the commitment was valid. But the timeline exposes the lie. The magistrate's order came first, based solely on words of despair, not actions. Michael wasn't a danger when they took him. He became reactive after being caged. That's the dark secret of the mental health system they've built. Once you're in it, every cry for help, every flinch, every desperate attempt to escape is catalogued as further evidence of your illness. It's a closed loop designed to trap the innocent, and if you have a son brave enough to call it out, they'll destroy him too. Now, I need you to connect the dots to a larger cultural moment, because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Remember Nathan Argent, October 31st, 2023, in Stuttgart, Arkansas, a Walmart employee on his lunch break. His ex-wife called the police, claiming he was threatening self-harm. Officers Haley Johnson and Sergeant Williams showed up. And when Nathan tried to walk away,
speech as an arrestable offense and applying unnecessary force to effect that unlawful arrest. Travis's comments considered in the context in which they were
exercising his constitutional right to end a consensual encounter, they told him it was a crime.
Criminal charges, and for exercising his First Amendment right to engage in unapologetic verbal challenge to police
to
action.
even have suicidal thoughts. That is a crime, Sergeant Williams actually said. Then they arrested him for obstruction when he refused to answer questions without a lawyer.
Voluntary commitment and refused to accept the officer's framing simply because it was being delivered by a uniformed officer. While Travis did speak aggressively to the officers and
They
did
searched his pockets.
offense, and an attempt to do so was considered a misdemeanor. However, these actions have since been decriminalized in the United States, although they still remain a crime in some other countries.
Found his father-in-law's blood pressure pills and slapped him with a theft charge. Charges dropped later, of course, but not before he was fired from his job, his life shattered. Nathan Argent is still looking for a civil rights attorney, his GoFundMe sitting there, ignored by the legal elite. These aren't isolated incidents. This is a coordinated assault on the family unit, on the right to speak, on the right to simply exist without being criminalized. We're watching a ritualistic dismantling of the ordinary man's dignity, performed by a system that claims to protect mental health, but only creates more trauma. And this is where the elite corruption becomes undeniable. In Travis's case, the Cherokee Code section 122500 requires a clear and present danger for involuntary commitment, not vague future ideation, not statements about maybe someday, not a son's expression of loyalty. The officer's own report admits Michael didn't have a weapon on him, that he was coherent, that his mother was the protective factor. Yet the magistrate signed off, a rubber stamp. In Nathan's case, Arkansas law section 204-7207 explicitly requires evidence of recent serious self-injury or an actual attempt for commitment. All they had was an ex-wife's phone call. No witness to a threat, no weapon, no nothing. But the officers detained him anyway, then lied about obstruction. They told his employer he was agitated.
Experiencing a mental health crisis. According to Section 20-47-207 of the Arkansas Code, individuals can be involuntarily admitted to a hospital, receiving facility, or treatment program.
That he had a box cutter, a standard tool for a Walmart worker, as if that proved he was dangerous. They destroyed his job, his reputation, his ability to pay for a storage unit. They left him on the streets. This is not incompetence. This is targeted persecution of the common man. And they are counting on you being too distracted, too scared, or too trusting to notice. But we see it now. We see the body cam footage where Travis, with his hands open, his voice shaking,
I never once
says,
threatened you, dude!
Where you from, bro?
I need to talk to y'all, Sergeant.
I'm right here.
Or who's above y'all, because that was not...
"You're a goddamn bully. I never once threatened you." We hear the desperation in his voice as he begs for different officers, as he calls out the lies in real time. We watch the system grind him into the floor, while his father, restrained in another room, can do nothing. And then we watch the charges disappear, because deep down, the courts know they have no case. But the damage is done. A father's mental health crisis becomes a family's legal nightmare. A son's act of love becomes a criminal record that almost was. And the officers? Officer Taylor and Sergeant Owl get an F from the legal analyst. But what does that mean? They're still on the force. They're still carrying badges. They faced no public reckoning, no perp walk, no humiliating deposition played on the evening news. The only thing that exposed them was their own body camera, a piece of technology they probably forgot was running. That's the only reason you know about this. Think about how many times there was no camera. Think about how many souls have been crushed in silence. The legend of the silenced hero is being written right now, and Travis Zepeda is one of those names you need to remember. He wasn't perfect. He spoke aggressively, yes. He didn't whisper and nod. He challenged their authority to their faces. and the First Amendment protected every single word he said. The original legal breakdown gave him a B+ for exercising his right to verbally oppose police action without becoming assaultive. He stood in the gap for his father when the system had its boot on the old man's neck. He said, "You're wrong, and I will not be silent." And for that, they choked him out. For that, they twisted his words into a bond money conspiracy. For that, they tried to brand him a criminal. But here's the thing the elite can't stand. He didn't break. Even as they cuffed him, even as they mocked him, even as they dragged him away, he kept
for evaluating an officer's use of force during an arrest in the 1989 case of Graham v. Connor, holding that the reasonableness of the force used is judged under the totality of the circumstances by weighing factors such as the severity of the crime at issue, whether the individual posed an immediate threat to the safety of officers
Look
or
at
others.
the body cam. I hope it's recording. He had faith in the truth, and that faith was vindicated when the charges were dropped. That is a biblical kind of justice. The kind where the stone the builders rejected becomes the cornerstone. Travis may not be a lawyer, he may not have a media platform, but he exposed them, and that terrifies the powers that be more than any lawsuit ever could. So what happens now? Michael Zepeda still doesn't have a lawyer to file his civil complaint. The legal system that loves to talk about accountability suddenly has no one willing to take the case. You don't find that suspicious? You don't find it strange that in a country overflowing with personal injury attorneys, not one will stand beside a man whose son was choked for saying he loved him? It's almost as if there's an invisible hand at work, a whispered message passed through the bar associations. Don't touch this. Don't challenge the tribal police. Don't make waves. And Nathan Argent? Same story. His GoFundMe sits with a link in the video description, and he waits for a phone call that may never come. The elite protect their own. They circle the wagons, and we are left to pick up the pieces, to tell our neighbours what happened, to share these videos in the middle of the night because the mainstream media won't touch them. They'll call it a mental health success story. They'll say the system worked because the charges were dropped. But you know better. You know that a dismissal isn't justice. It's just an admission that they couldn't make the lie stick. The scar remains. The lost job, the broken trust, the terror in a son's voice as he gasped for air. None of that gets healed by a piece of paper. I'm going to leave you with this, because I believe in ending with the raw, unfiltered anger that this deserves. The next time you hear a politician say we need more mental health funding, ask yourself, what kind of system are they actually building? Because what I see is a machine that labels every hurting soul as a danger, that dispatches armed officers instead of counsellors, that punishes the families who dare to intervene. And when those families speak up, when a son says he'd go above and beyond for his dad, they get a chokehold. They get a criminal charge built on a lie. They get abandoned by the legal establishment. This is not a glitch. This is the design, and it has been hiding in plain sight. The only reason we have these stories is because of a few brave souls who wouldn't shut up, and because a body camera happened to be running. What about the ones who had no camera? What about the sons and daughters we'll never hear about, whose arrests are sealed, whose complaints are shredded? They want you to feel powerless. They want you to think it's too big, too complicated, too deeply entrenched. But every time you watch this video and share it, you become part of the exposure. You become the jury they can't intimidate. So here's my direct question to you, the one I need you to answer honestly in the comments below, because the algorithm needs to know we're not going anywhere. If this happened to your father, if an officer twisted your words of love into a criminal threat and then put his hands on your throat, what would you do? Would you fight back? Would you stay silent and let the system grind him down? Or would you be like Travis, risking everything because blood is thicker than the badge? Tell me right now. I want to see your answers. I want to see this community rise up and send a message that we are awake, that we see the corruption, that we will never stop demanding justice for the ones they try to silence. Because if we don't, then they win. And that, my friends, is not an option.